Team Fortress 2 fans really like talking about things TF2 has. Instead, I want to talk about things that TF2 doesn't have. Players? No, not today. What I want to talk about are features that are missing from TF2 that, when you really think about it, make a whole lot of sense to be included in the game. Or at the very least, makes a whole lot more sense to be included here than other games that do have these features. The goal with this video is to make an argument for the following additions that make you wonder, why doesn't TF2 have these features? I will have to say that there are concise and practical answers for that question, so for the sake of argument and entertainment, just assume that TF2 is in such a state that these features would have been entirely possible. I'll still talk a bit about feasibility, but I want to argue why TF2 is more fitting to have these options compared to other games. Anyways, let's get on with the first one. Let me explain this topic because I can already hear some rebuttals. Yes, TF2 does support controller play, and Steam input is also available for you to customize that experience. However, even with those options there, you can't really say that TF2 has full controller support. While you can move, shoot, and taunt with a regular controller in-game, everything outside of the game becomes clunky as hell. The main menu, the settings, the backpack, the scoreboard, and the voting menus, and numerous other things that just don't play well with the controller. At some point, you have to use the virtual mouse or your real mouse to click on one thing or another, and while this is a workable compromise, you have to let go of your controller or manipulate extra menus. You might as well just use your mouse and keyboard to play the game, which you might argue is the way the game is supposed to be played. So why care about controllers at all? Aside from the fact that supporting gamepads increases the amount of ways someone can play a game and opens it up to a greater audience, TF2 just feels natural being played with controller, which isn't surprising as TF2 came included with the orange box for 360 and PlayStation 3. Unlike a game like Counter-Strike, TF2 never required having pinpoint accuracy that would be done better by a mouse. Rather, most weaponry and some classes entirely in TF2 don't require you to be accurate to be effective. Even Sniper, which you would think absolutely requires accuracy, has a charge-up mechanic to compensate for someone who does not have the ability to hit headshots. So for most cases, not being as accurate or as dexterous as with a mouse isn't that big of a deal. And sure, you are more than likely not an Xbox Halo Pro, so you will be at a competitive disadvantage against someone with a mouse, but then why does that matter? TF2 isn't a competitive game. You're first and foremost there to have fun, and if playing on a controller makes you most comfortable, then TF2 isn't going to punish you or diminish your experience by doing so, except for the jankiness of it all at the moment. I think that if TF2 were to have fully embraced controller play from day one and continue to do so throughout its life cycle on PC, it would have been reinforced as a casual, laid-back game that it's supposed to be known for. Nothing says laid back as a game that can be played while chilling on a couch in front of a TV. Then TF2 wouldn't be this technical computer game that requires you to learn how to play it on mouse and keyboard. It would just be a game that is played with a game controller, something that most general players are familiar with and would ease the transition of playing TF2. But something tells me that better support isn't too far off from the realm of possibility, given Valve's previous efforts to modernize their other games for Steam Deck support. That's all up in the air, however. On to the next feature. Now, this is a feature that I'm sure no one was expecting and is probably making many of you scratch your head. Let me explain. As we've established, Team Fortress 2 is a casual multiplayer game, and a split-screen feature would have fit the game well if it were included initially. With no need for competitive integrity and with the less try-hardy nature of the game, playing split-screen TF2 in a room with your best buddies sounds like an absolute blast. Imagine it, you and your friends or family pushing through the last point of Dust Bowl all together at the same time. One of you as a medic pocket pair, the other as an engineer, and the last one as a spy preparing for a backstab, all together, split-screen on one TV. Who's to say you're all on the same team? Nothing like a little bit of friendly competition, right? Or even fighting through a campaign of Gear Grinder MVM, with you and your buddies destroying robots to your heart's galore. Damn, doesn't that sound like a lot of fun? This would have also served the game's popularity on a front that the game has long suffered in. TF2 has had a bad rap of not being approachable to beginner players for a multitude of reasons. One of those reasons is that it's almost required for you to have someone explain the game, as the game itself doesn't do that great of a job of it. Well, what better way to introduce someone to a game than having that person physically there playing alongside the newbie? I mean, this is how I got introduced to Black Ops 2 by one day playing multiplayer split screen online with my cousin on his Xbox. Imagine the impact TF2 would have had on the mainstream if that were possible, where many people would be introduced with the game and creating that demand for it in the most natural way possible. Of course, this would have been nearly impossible on the orange box copy of the game due to the severe limitations of the consoles at the time, but given the fact that split screen works so well with Left 4 Dead, I think it would have been an amazing feature to have somewhere down the line. It certainly would have made TF2 one of the most unique games on PC, as split screen isn't really that prevalent as a feature, especially on the PC platform, even though it's something that should be in any game that can afford to have it, especially with how robust Steam input is. Imagine having the most versatile and powerful platform for controllers, yet not having the games to show its potential through split-screen local play. But let's get on with the final and probably the feature that could have, on its own, launched TF2 to the stratosphere if the effort were there. I think the biggest mistake Valve ever did with TF2, aside from Meet Your Match, was never embracing the console market. There is a simple reason for that: they just didn't feel like it. Also, Microsoft were jerks about free updates to games at the time, requiring a price tag for what otherwise would have been free DLC. Anyway, that's not really the point here. The point is that if Valve were more invested in TF2's success outside of esports, and if Microsoft better understood games as a service, then there is a universe where TF2 on consoles would have been updated alongside the PC version. Things would be rough for the Xbox 360 version of the game, but Valve could have ported the game onto the Xbox One and things would have been much better from then on. And if that dream port would have existed, then crossplay could have been there from the get-go. I mean, crossplay is now a standard industry thing in modern times. Nearly every big multiplayer game offers crossplay as a feature since it's a great selling point. Why get a game you can't play with your friends on, when you could just get one that allows you to play on your PC while your buddies can join you on their Xbox or PlayStation? The feature being standard is honestly nothing but a positive, yet there is one fundamental problem with most FPS games that feature it. They are not casual games. Apex, Overwatch, Call of Duty, and The Finals are well-known crossplay games, however they deliberately separate PC and console queues because of the competitive integrity. Keyboard and gamepads are not at all balanced well on any game, and thus crossplay tends to be a gilded feature. It's nice that it's there, but honestly most players are going to disable the feature because controller players don't like the unfair advantage mice have, and keyboard players don't like the cheapness of aim assist that gamepads have. In the console sphere, almost every single PC player are seen as sweats because of that unfair advantage, making them look like they're trying out for their next spawn on FaZe Clan. So the question then becomes, what's the point of crossplay? At least you can play in between consoles, but it still bothers me that these FPS games don't fully embrace crossplay. But what did we talk about when it came to controllers with TF2? This is where it all falls into place, and we realize that crossplay makes a whole lot more sense with a game like TF2, where it doesn't matter if someone has a competitive advantage. The gameplay design and the laid-back nature of TF2 makes that irrelevant. You don't have to be mechanically at the top of your game, and some classes don't require you to have good aim skill at all, and thus everyone can play the game and still have fun. Crossplay is a feature that almost seems made for TF2, and it's a damn shame that it's not a part of it. But anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section. Subscribe and like the video if you liked it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.